Italian man Marco Mariolini earned the nickname Anorexic Hunter due to his disturbing fixation towards emaciated women. But he wasn't simply drawn to women who were already thin. He wanted to actively shape them into emaciation by pushing their bodies to extreme levels of malnutrition. He made his wife starve herself, making her lose more than 70 pounds until he eventually broke up with her once he got her pregnant. Marco then started dating a woman named Monica, whom he would punch in the stomach if she ate anything he considered excessive. He would even take her to nice restaurants where he would eat in front of her while she was forced to starve. One day Monica had enough and attacked him with a hammer before later turning herself in, only to end up facing house arrest with her monstrous partner. Marco would end up fatally stabbing her 22 times in retribution, and only spent a few years in prison before being released in 2021. By the way, I have no idea what's going on with that facial hair. It's totally unrelated to the story. Trust me, I have so many questions myself. 1986, 21-year-old Christopher Thomas Knight ran out of gas in rural Maine, entered the woods, and lived there for the next 27 years without human contact. He survived by committing over 1,000 burglaries against houses in the area to be able to endure the harsh winters of Maine. Knight was eventually captured by a game warden and sentenced to 7 months in jail, later vowing to live normally and to never steal again. In the 19th century, African woman Sarah Baartman was displayed as a freak show attraction in Europe for her unusually large backside. Marketed as the missing link between man and beast, she was often brought out as an exhibit at wealthy parties and private events. In 1815, Sarah died of an unknown illness at the age of 26, likely as a result of her poor living conditions. Her remains were later displayed in the French Museum of Natural History for over a century, before she was finally laid to rest in her native South Africa in 2002. This photo shows The Undertaker looking down at medical staff after chokeslamming Mick Foley through the roof of Hell in a Cell. The 16-foot fall was completely unplanned and left Foley with bruised ribs, a dislocated jaw, and internal bleeding. The Undertaker was certain he'd just killed the man, but Foley managed to get up and even complete the match. During a 1999 pay-per-view event, Owen Hart plummeted 78 feet to his death when the harness lowering him to the ring snapped. Former Japanese wrestler Hayabusa is considered to be a pioneer of high flying in the sport, but his career ended abruptly in 2001 after a botched backflip left him paralyzed from the neck down. The world record for alcohol consumption was set by pro wrestler Andre the Giant. The 7'4" monster once drank 156 beers in one sitting, which is just under 15 gallons. Once considered a wrestling legend, Chris Benoit murdered his wife and son before taking his own life in 2007. After multiple tests were conducted, it was revealed that his head was so damaged from concussions that he had the brain of an 85-year-old with a severe form of dementia, perhaps contributing to his horrific behavior. In 1981, David Kerwin was driving through Yellowstone's hot springs with his friend Ronald Radcliffe and Ronald's dog Moosey. At some point, they parked their truck for a closer look at one of the beautiful hot springs, but it quickly turned into a nightmare. Moosey the dog suddenly jumped into the scorching hot pool and immediately started yelping in pain. Even though many people warned him not to jump into the near boiling water, David dove straight in and attempted to rescue the suffering dog. He grabbed Moosey and made it close to the edge before letting go and sinking until his friend pulled him back out. Immediately afterwards, David muttered, "That was stupid. How bad am I? That was a stupid thing I did." He was immediately blinded since the hot spring melted his eyeballs, and when someone helped pull his shoe off, his skin came off with it. David sustained third-degree burns to 100% of his body and died the next day after living out his final hours in agonizing pain. Sadly, Moosey the dog also did not survive. In 2009, spelunker John Jones was caving with some friends and family in the Nutty Putty cave in Utah. About an hour into the expedition, John decided to find the route known as the Birth Canal, a dangerously narrow passage that expert spelunkers must crawl through carefully if they dare. After finding what he thought was the Birth Canal, he crawled in head first and began inching his way forward. But John would soon realize that this wasn't the birth canal at all, as it was clearly way tighter than anything safe to crawl through. The problem was, he didn't have enough space to wiggle back out the way he came, so his only option was to continue pushing forward. 4 hours later, John's brother heard him screaming for help and returned with men and supplies to help get him out. Over the next 27 hours, rescuers did their best to pull John out of the crevice despite the unlikelihood. At one point, they were so close to freeing him using a pulley system, but one of the supports suddenly snapped and John fell down even deeper. They soon lost all hope of saving him, and at some point he died from cardiac arrest due to being unable to breathe. John's body was never retrieved, and the cave has since been completely sealed off. A 19-year-old girl named Olga was camping with her stepfather in Russia when a vicious mother bear suddenly attacked them. After the bear broke her stepfather's neck and smashed his skull, Olga attempted to run, but the bear chased her down and soon grabbed her by the legs before attacking her. Olga then managed to make 3 phone calls to her mother while being eaten alive by the bear and her 3 cubs. In the first phone call, she screamed, "Mom, the bear is eating me. Mom, it's such agony. Please help me." At first, her mother thought it was a sick prank, but soon heard the true horror in her daughter's voice and the sound of the bears chewing and growling. But she could only helplessly listen in horror to her daughter's screams for mercy. In her last call, nearly an hour after the first, the bears had left her, but Olga knew she wasn't gonna make it. She said, "Mom, it's not hurting anymore. I don't feel the pain. Forgive me for everything. I love you so much." The call eventually cut off, and the 2 bodies were found that same day. After just one date with him in 2018, Arizona woman Jacqueline Adis allegedly sent a man over 159,000 texts over a 10-month span. Some of the texts were incredibly disturbing threats like, "I'd make sushi out of your kidneys and chopsticks out of your hand bones. I'd wear your fascia in the top of your skull and your hands and feet." Adis was later arrested for trespassing inside the man's home while he was out of the country, but she was later declared mentally incompetent to stand trial and the charges were dropped. This is the 2,000-year-old skull of Mary Magdalene on display at St. Maximin Basilica in France. It's considered to be one of the most precious relics in all of Christendom. In 2008, 19-year-old Brandon Swanson drove his car into a ditch while driving home from a party. He called his parents and told them he was fine, but wasn't sure exactly where he was. Nearly 50 minutes into the call, he suddenly yelled, "Oh shit," and then went silent. He's never been seen nor heard from again. This man accidentally entered the real-life backrooms and was found dead 3 weeks later. In January of 2017, 71-year-old Bernard Gore was supposed to meet his wife and daughter at a Westfield mall in Sydney, Australia, but never showed up. He'd apparently been doing some shopping on his own before they showed up, then completely disappeared without a trace. After frantically searching for her husband who suffered from dementia, Angela Gore filed a missing persons report with local authorities. Bernard was last seen by a store clerk who said the man looked confused on the morning of his disappearance. Investigators were initially hopeful when surveillance footage showed Bernard walking towards a fire escape, but they didn't realize that through the exit was a complete labyrinth of stairwells, confusing hallways, and self-locking doors. In fact, the entire fire escape stretches for 8 miles, and numerous mall shoppers have been lost down there before, with one woman describing it as a maze from a nightmare. Accordingly, it took police 3 weeks to finally locate Bernard's lifeless body in the stairwell. He was likely wandering around the fire escape for up to an entire week before eventually succumbing to natural causes. Bernard's death was officially ruled the result of a misadventure. In 1989, the Buffalo Sabres goalie had his neck sliced by another player's skate, severing his carotid artery. It resulted in so much blood loss that 11 fans fainted, 2 had heart attacks, and 3 players puked on the ice. His life was saved by the team medic, who luckily served in the Vietnam War as a combat medic. In 1962, a Cuban boxer named Benny Perret made fun of his opponent Emil Griffith for being a homosexual. Griffith ended up beating Perret so badly that he fell into a coma and died 10 days after the fight. In 1973, the U.S. Army developed an anti-tank grenade by hollowing out a Nerf football and filling it with explosives. However, the ball never made it to the battlefield since the explosives gave it an unpredictable flight. In 1977, the University of Evansville men's basketball team was involved in a tragic plane crash. The crash killed every player on the team except for one man who didn't make the trip due to an injury. 2 weeks later, that only remaining player was killed by a drunk driver.